Apologise for the low light. Couldn't sleep. So I thought I'd wake up and I'll do a video. I was just thinking about something. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I should maybe put that up. When I was doing my degree, I had one lecturer who was who was a homosexual, and he when he found out I was a Christian, he went out of his way to come and talk to me and try and debate with me about the Bible. That's not true. He adamantly wanted to try and prove to me that the Bible wasn't true. Okay, so he loved arguing about it, and I loved it. I loved debating with people. It's fun. I actually learn a hell of a lot from debating with people. I learn probably more than they learn from me, and it really sharpens you a bit. Anyway, this guy used to come in. He ran the homosexual group in the city, and he was pretty passionate, and he would spend hours, literally hours and hours at night, researching information to try and find contradictions in the Bible and prove to me the Bible isn't true. So this went on and on and on. Anyway, a couple years later, I mean, it was very, very ongoing, and the guy put in literally, I don't know how many hours and hours and hours trying to prove it, and I just very, very easily looked at his so-called contradictions or evidence the Bible's not correct and all this, and I just looked at it, and it was always, he must have gone to sites on that stuff or something, I don't know. Anyway, he literally used to bring like piles of paper printed out on this so-called evidence, and it was childish how easy it was to see through the apparent contradictions that they were saying were there. Anyway, I used to just go through and the list and go da 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 da. It'd take me ages. In the end, I just said, oh look, dude, they're so easy. Any normal Christian who's read their Bible can. You don't need me to disprove these. Any Christian can disprove these. These are no-brainers. These are really, really simple study to disprove. Because I'd proven so many, it was just getting tedious, to be honest. So, anyway, he left actually the being a lecturer at that place, and I didn't know what had happened to him. Anyway, I get an email and a year later telling me he's become a Christian. So, oh, so he was such a fervent, hard out opponent, always trying. But really, to be honest, I knew straight away. I knew this guy was actually deeply depressed. I knew he was deeply mentally unstable, lots and lots of stuff going on, and the harder he was fighting was because of what was going on in his life, and I knew that, and his life, everything inside of him was being shaken. But what does show me is there's people out there who will fight tooth and nail against you for their point, because their point is so basically unstable, and they'll try to go against the Bible. Now that's the worst thing you can do. As soon as you start trying to say the Bible is not correct, you're going to be studying the rest of your life trying to find problems with the Bible, and you never will. You don't think this has actually been studied? You don't think that the last 2,000 plus the 1,400 years by the Jews studying the scriptures hasn't actually occurred? It has been analysed. Lifetimes of monks and scholars have been put in the subject, where they have looked at it, they've analysed it, they've scrutinised it, and every single apparent contradiction has been written about like for hundreds of years, not just this decade, not just the digital age, but for hundreds of years scholars have done this. There is zero reason why you should not believe the Bible. Zero reason. And I've never ever, after like looking at heaps of people saying, "Oh, there's contradiction," I've never found a contradiction when you actually look at when you study it. Some of them look like they are not matching up, but actually, usually, which is quite cool, is that you study it more because you go, "Oh, that does look like a contradiction. That does look different." It actually usually you find it's not a contradiction at all, but it actually gives you even greater detail and understanding about what actually happened. So it doesn't contradict, it actually embellishes, and not embellishes, that's probably the wrong word here, people jump all over that one. It actually refines it and gives it greater insight, usually. So some of these contradictions, apparent contradictions, can actually be really useful for actually giving you even more clarity. Yeah, so great. Of what I think is interesting is those who are the most fervent evangelists against you, who are trying to disprove the Bible, are usually the ones who are the most unstable. The worst people are the ones who just don't care at all. They just aren't interested, they don't care. Who cares about Noah's flood? Who cares if the world flooded? That's what they're the ones I just realise, oh, give up on them. They just don't care anyway, either way, they don't care. They're not interested in God, they're not interested in any proofs or any reasoning. The ones who do care are usually the ones that you can actually talk to about stuff. Yeah. If there was a global flood, that means that all the rock layers that are proposed for long ages on, oh, this is millions of years and evolution happened because of this, that's all total garbage if there was a global flood. Now, I think the thing is, rational human beings should realize where 71% of the earth is covered in water, okay, and there's sedimentary layers, and some of them layers cover the entire planet, all continents. Some layers go all across Europe, all across America, all across the Middle East, everywhere. Same layer, right across, and it's proven it's been laid down rapidly. So that means there was a global catastrophe that happened because the layer's been laid down rapidly, and it covers the entire globe. Okay, now we have water, 71% water, and the Bible says there's a global flood. A catastrophe that has to be global involving water fits the Bible quite nicely. There's 800 cultures, old cultures, that say in their oral traditions, the written traditions, have a global flood in their history or in their past. So the evidence of the water, the evidence of the layers there, the evidence is all there. So evolution hasn't actually got any time dates to stand on at all. There is no long ages for evolution to actually even say. The Earth itself has no real dating methods that actually prove a long Earth at all. The ones proposed by evolution are the strata layers, and as I said, if there's a global flood, which the evidence is so strongly, you couldn't even come up with better evidence for it. There isn't. I can't even, unless you actually got a little sign written in the strata layers themselves saying this was laid down by a global flood. How do I know? Because I'm in the flood. This is Noah here, and I've signed it for you. You know, there is no greater evidence for a global flood because there's already the strata layer. There's already layers covering every continent, the same layer, and there is water, like on the strata layers, is actually water ripples and all that are hardened and rapidly being buried. So it's just the more and more you look into it, you realize, okay, there's no layers. The layers are rapidly buried. Okay, global catastrophe, global flood. That means no long ages. Evolution doesn't happen observably in one man's lifetime, let alone, so it hasn't been observed. It hasn't been observed, and it says, oh, it happens far too slowly for it to be observed, you know. The only evolution which they call evolution, you've got to be careful. Evolution is, you know, species to species. That's what we're talking about here. But evolutionists also call evolution when you see a mutation or something like that. They say, oh yeah, look, we've seen evolution in the test tube. So they call that evolution. So you know, you say there's no evolution. I see it all the time in my laboratories. That's what biologists say. They're talking about variation within a gene. You know, gene variation. You get dogs and you breed dogs and they vary. They're not species evolution. There's variance within the gene and the genes. Okay, so they're trying to prove long animals changing into animals. Okay, by saying we observe it. No, there's no evolution observed. It's only species and gene mutations and all that. But no animals are changing from animals to animals. Everyone can see that you can breed. All the dogs can interbreed. They're all dogs, but they're actually different variants of the genes. Okay, so it is yeah, it's got a classic evolutionists arguing evolution that it's observable, and then other evolutionists are saying no, it's not observable, it can't happen in a lifetime. But then we see the rock layers and we say, well, there is actually no long time. There's no ages. There is no millions of years in these rock layers for evolution to have evolved upwards or whatever, or taken time. So how are you going to do it in thousands of years? It can't. If it's not observable, and there's no millions of years for it to happen, it's not going to happen. Okay, so evolution is a very debunked. I think of it like a house of cards. You build you get cards, and you put them on a table, and you start building your like first floor, second floor, all the way up. And evolution's been doing that, and all its sciences have been building upon the bases and building the work, and then having theories coming off it. But it's all a house of cards. There's no basis for it. There's no actual stable base for believing it. You push over the bottom layer, like, we need time for evolution to be a feasible concept, you know, hypothesis, hypothesis. For it to be feasible, let's chuck our figure out there. We need billions of years. Okay, if we chuck billions of years at it, it might be feasible. So they need the time for it to even be plausible. Okay, and if you push over that house of cards and you go, no, where are your billions of years? Where do you get that from? Are you getting it from rock layers? I don't think so. Global flood gets rid of that. So where are you getting your billions of years? But we use radiometric dating. You use radiometric dating on the rock layers, which already have been proven to be done by a global flood. It means your dating method is wrong. Okay? You're trying to prove the ages of these rock layers, which have to have been caused by a catastrophe like a global flood. So your actual dating method must be flawed. Can we prove that? Yeah. Date anything that you know its age. Use radiometric dating. Okay. Remember, they've only got radiometric dating to work with. That's their big proof, long ages of these rock strata. So you get some uranium, you get something that has something in it that you can use a radio decay rate on, and they've done this heaps of times. The lava flows in different places on the world where they've seen it come out and it's formed, and the rock's actually formed, and they know how old it is. Now there's examples of it where it was done, and they know that rock now is 11 years old, and there should be, you know, this amount of helium in it, and all this. Okay, let's date it using radiometric dating. We know how old it is. We've got a good, you know, observable control here for our dating method to be analysed against. What do they get? Flipping million years plus for it when it's 11. So they've done it multiple times, and yes, it fails. So their long ages that they're trying to prove exist in the rock clouds, which are obviously proven by a global flood, are showing millions of years, but when you use the dating methods on actually known samples, they are millions of years. They're wrong. So again, not only are they dating the rocks using a method that's flawed, but they're actually got nothing. It's stupid. They're dating, trying to prove layers that are obviously not millions of years old anyway. So yeah. Whereas the time for evolutionists, they don't have any. Okay, so that's just, if you're looking just on Earth, there's no time. There's not enough helium that's been created and gone into our atmosphere. It hasn't built up enough for there to be even a million years. It's like, where is the helium accumulation? Helium's been as a byproduct. It comes out of the Earth and seeps into the atmosphere, and it's not there, and it hasn't built up over millions. There's no millions of years of accumulation, and there's a real problem. What about the salt in the sea? The percentages. They're looking at the rates and they're going, oh, seems to be getting saltier by this amount of time, but there's not enough salt in the sea for it to be old. Yeah, you just go date after date, ratio after ratio, observation after observation, and there's just no time for evolution at all. Evolution, as I said, is a house of cards. You could just push over that, push over it. But what I found is, you look at any layer of the house of cards, and you analyze it, it collapses as well. Not just the days, not just the ages, but anything. If you look at cosmology, let's look at cosmology. Apparently, okay, let's look at this. A singularity, that's what they call it, which is so small, but occurs, and something makes it all blow up and cause all the matter in the universe to explode outwards and create everything. Now, this singularity, which can't be defined by physics, or there's nothing observable or known, or there's nothing to prove it even existed or how it could exist. Okay, anyway, called a singularity, and then there's another quantum fluctuation that no physics or science actually observed, obviously. It has to have occurred somehow again. No physics behind or science behind why this singularity explodes. Okay, again, it's all I might as well just make up my own story. There's no science behind any of it. It's like, we'll just believe that there is a alternative universe, and there's a giant marble called Beatrice who put blew her nose one day, and accidentally part of her snot shot out of her universe and created our universe. I mean, that's about as flippin' believable as this singularity with quantum fluctuation that somehow blows up and everything comes out of nothing. Everything, all matter comes out of nothing. You know, everything we see comes from nothing. Now, that's exactly what the Bible actually says, but it but it says God created everything from nothing. They're saying, oh, a quantum fluctuation of a singularity created everything from nothing. Duh. That's just rubbish. You know, why should I believe that? There's no science. It's not science. Not even close to science. It's maybe science fiction or something. It's not science. Okay, so that's there. And then it all goes up. And then they say, oh, 15 billion years, you know, our universe, that's how old it is, 15 billion. Let's pull that one out of the hat. Okay. Let's just come up with our an age. No science, no science. Just an age is how big we think it is. Now this is before they had really powerful telescopes and all this. It's just absolute rubbish. Ages, dates. Uh, you just come up with anything you think with whatever unbelievable formulas you want to create, because it doesn't matter. Because science advances, and then they go, "Oh, you are so wrong. You're so wrong. Your universe, what you thought was the universe, is actually nowhere near that." Okay, they've now found, like, with the telescopes back in the day, they couldn't even see galaxies. They couldn't even see galaxies. They didn't even know other galaxies existed. They could see stars, but they couldn't see galaxies. They didn't even know. They have no idea. Now, with our telescopes now, they've found billions, literally billions of galaxies. Billions. Galaxies. Now, there's billions of stars in our galaxy. We're talking billions of stars in our galaxy. So there's billions of galaxies. So there's billions and billions of stars in each galaxy. The universe is far, far bigger than they even could have dreamed. Okay, but they're coming out with all these ages and singularities and all this stuff. Anyway, so this thing blows up. Apparently, creates this massive, massive universe out of nothing. I think it's easier to believe the Bible at this point, to be honest. Okay, order out of chaos, out of nothing. Okay, complexity out of nothing, intelligence out of nothing. That's just so unbelievably stupid. Anyway, and then as physics is advanced, over the things, Hubble discovers, when he's looking through a telescope, he discovers that there's I think it's called the Copernican. No, is that it? No. Anyway, there's I can't remember the terminology. Anyway, when something's moving away, it shifts to the red, apparently, and when it's moving towards you, it's called to have a blue shift. So when you're observing something, you can see if it's moving away or moving towards you based on its shift, which way it's shifting. So Hubble is, and this is well known, this is an easy scientifically provable thing for them. So that's like, yay, we've got something at least works. So Hubble's looking through, and he notices that all the galaxies he's looking at are shifting red from where he's looking. No matter which direction he looks in, he notices a red shift and everything. And he starts to get a real uneasy feeling. Like a very, very, he must have felt ill. Because he didn't want to believe that Earth was situated near the center of the universe, the observable universe, because everything he observed seemed to be shifting away from us, which means that if everything's moving away from us, it must have at some stage been closer to us, and if you just keep going backwards with that, then it must all come back to where we are. So our galaxy must be in the vicinity of the center of the universe if you're looking at redshifting galaxies. Okay, so he saw that and he thought, oh, no, can't do that. Can't believe that. That would make us somehow special in the universe. And special sort of denotes a mysterious being. So he was like, well, we can't afford to let religious people jump on this idea. So they come out with some pretty elaborate concepts in physics to try and disprove the obvious scientific observation he was making. Okay, so we're observing this, but this is very not cool for us to observe that, because this sort of points to a creator type and specialness. So we're going to come up with some weird elaborate theories to try and work around it. Okay, and so they did. They come up with these hypotheses that everything gets larger and moves away from each other. But they also came up with there's no center and there's no boundary and there's anyway. of all his rubbish and theories and all the stuff that's going on. And it's really all rubbish actually when you look at it all. The assumptions and rubbish are just. I want to believe this. I'm gonna say this. Okay, there's no science. It's a complete bias. What happens is this. It seems like the scientists are completely not objective at all. Okay, and that's what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be objective. No, they're not. They've got a presupposition. They've got a complete bias to what they want to believe. So they go out of their way to try and formulate some method to fit their bias. That's it. I mean, Hubble observed something. Now, impartially, he should have written his findings saying, well, it seems like we're in the middle of the universe. Yeah, but no, can't rest on that. So they formulate that there is no middle, that if they're anywhere, they're looking out, it'll all look like redshifting. Now that doesn't work, because if you're on one side and you're of the universe and I'm on the other, and from my perspective everything's moving away from me, so it looks like I'm the middle, then you go to the other side of the universe and you're there observing, you'll be seeing all the galaxies moving towards you. So they'll be blue shifting. So that doesn't work at all. So that whole idea and theory that it'll look all the same from wherever you are, it is not even rational. It can't work. Okay, so really, it appears we are special. Thanks Hubble for being such a dick and not actually, just, how can scientists be such idiots, not objective at all. Oh, it grates the hell out of me. Another one, this is what I mean. When you've got a presupposition, evolution's true, everything's old, your brain is so brainwashed, so you're so brainwashed to believe that, and everyone else is just religious fanatics. That's what they say, you're just a brainwashed religious fanatic. I agree. I am completely washed by the Holy Spirit. My brain has been washed. It has finally been cleansed of all the crap it used to believe. Yeah, and it has to happen. It's called the renewing of your mind, just for the record. You actually have to get your mind renewed because it has been polluted by so much lies and so much falsehood in this world, inspired by demonic actual beings, which science doesn't believe exist. But personally, I know they exist. I know very, 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 very personally they exist. So these demonic beings are inspiring and influencing all these minds of these scientists who think they're impartial, but they're putting these presuppositions on the things they see to try and come up with what they want to believe. Okay, no objectiveness there at all. It's supposed to be objective. It's not. So anyway, I am completely biased. I know there's a spirit. I know there are natural explanations do not explain this universe accurately. In fact, if you take out the actual correct answer and you try and explain things only using natural, and the correct answer was using spiritual, you're only going to get wrong answers. No matter how hard you try and explain them with the natural, if that's not how it happened, then your answers are all going to be false anyway. So science is very, very one-sided, very blind, and it can't ever come to the truth. If it wasn't formed naturally, it's never, ever going to get a correct answer. And that's the flaw, it's fatal flaw. Okay. Now, I'm lucky. I know there's spiritual things, bang, miles ahead of the scientists. So can we use science to actually, can science be useful when from this perspective? For sure. The guy who invented the MIR, is it? Yeah. Anyway, he was a young Earth creationist. Okay, so he didn't need any evolutionary long ages or brainwashing for science to be, science to be improved. Yeah, I don't think evolution has actually helped the world at all. I think it's just brought more racism. I think it's just brought theories that are built upon this evolutionary idea, and all of them are under the pretense of it being true, and it's all false. And so they're all actually collapsed scientific theories that are actually all actually wrong. So I think it's taken multiple fields in the wrong direction for generations now. And I think vast amounts of science has actually been built upon it, which has actually been inaccurate because of it. Here's a really good reason. Um, the scientists used to say, because of the evolution belief, okay, they used to say, oh, we evolved and we've got parts of our body are throwbacks from our old previous evolutionary states. Okay, so they call it used to call it vestigial organs. Okay, and they're saying, oh yeah, this, you don't need your tonsils, you don't need your appendix, you don't all these parts in our body. There's about 100 parts proposed vestigial evolutionary throwback parts of our body that aren't actually useful. Um, every 100 all the ones proposed, they've all been found to have proper, actually functioning uses, and they're not throwbacks at all. But medical science, because it was basing believing evolution, it was basing its medical decisions on it, on that theory, and it was cutting out parts of people that it deemed not useful because they couldn't find a use for it. So the evolution is saying, oh, that's an evolutionary throwback. This is our ideology. This is the evolutionary, and their ideology was saying, oh, that's evolutionary because we couldn't find a use for it. That's a stupid way to actually do something. Because we can't find a use for it or can't think of what it could be used for, it must be evolutionary throwback. That's stupid science. It's better to err on the side of, oh, it might have a use, we just haven't found it yet. It's a far better position and far more objective and safer. And anyway, the medical world obviously wasn't using any rationale. It went along with the evolutionary idea. Oh yeah, we can't find a use for it, so we must cut it out. It's not useful. It's evolutionary throwback organs. And all these operations have been performed on people over the years based on this premise. And unfortunately, evolution is so damn entrenched in people's thinking that the medical world hasn't updated its practices. Even though all the vestigial organs have actually been discovered, there is still a widely spread. I mean, I've talked to scientists, I've talked to them recently, as in a week ago, and they're still talking vestigial organs and operations and all that sort of appendix, you don't need that. There's been found a medical use for all of them. Okay, so evolution has actually polluted fields of study and actually physically injured people on a premise that isn't actually true. So I reckon it's damaged people in every area, from psychology to the medical field to everything. I think that every single one of its theories, like junk DNA, all them, now they used to call it vestigial DNA. Again, the vestigial, because we can't find a use for it, it must be evolutionary proof of our past. Now they found a use for it in the last 5 years. So it's like, oh, your vestigial organs failed, so you went to vestigial DNA. That's failed because you found a use for it. Your reasoning and rationale, evidence is never evidence. It's just we can't find a use for it, so it must be evolution. It's not proof. That's just idiocy. Okay, so anyway, that's what's happened, and the medical field's been polluted. I think the whole scientific I think every field of study has been polluted by this cancer called evolution. They say, oh, it's been the greatest thing to help our, last 200 years, or was it 300 years, 200? I don't even know how long it's been. I don't care, really. But Darwin has actually been wrong from day dot. Every single one of his proves to try and prove evolution, it's been proven wrong. Okay, he wasn't even a scientist. He had maybe qualifications as a theologian. There's a low-level theologian. He wasn't a high-level theologian. Otherwise, he wouldn't have believed evolution in the first place. So he had no scientific qualifications or anything like that. But yeah, the world hangs its opinion on this thing, this ideology, because they want to believe in something other than a god. And anyway, he's been promoted. Oh, what a hero! What a hero! The theory has actually done more damage to the science and the progression of the human race than anything. Now, if they actually, I think if they'd gone on track and actually said, oh, the Bible actually must be true, it seems to be totally accurate. There is design. I I believe the actual planet would have been far, far in a superior position in the scientific breakthroughs and everything. Okay, they think creationism and that type of belief in young Earth is actually would totally destroy science. Actually, what it would do is totally fix science from the backward position it's been taking. From the so-called advances, which are actually not advances at all, it's going further and further and further into theories that are all completely wrong. So it's going away from actually making breakthroughs. Okay? So it's very frustrating because every single evidence for evolution is always falsified. Every single one. You can't hang your hat on one thing in evolution as proof for it because it's always destroyed. You name one thing that evolution can say it's true about evolution, I guarantee you that won't be true in a year, 2 years, 5 years. It's just always destroyed. So every single thing that evolutionists have held onto and said this is our dogma, this is the truth, has always been obliterated under scrutiny. Anyway, I was just waking up and I just thought I'd talk and everything. But really, is there anyone out there who's rational? Like, if you're an evolutionist, can you honestly, objectively look at what you're doing and say you actually think objectively that it's right? You must. I'm wondering if it's an insanity. I'm wondering if it's well, I know there's demonic beings, so I think, okay, what is it? Is it a mental illness? Or is it a demonic being is brainwashing you and stopping you from being able to actually be objective and actually look at things? Because how can you honestly, objectively look at DNA and the complexity and all that sort of stuff and not see information encoded in there and see design? How can you objectively not look at the diversity in creation and think there isn't enough time for these genetic mutations, which mutations have, we don't observe mutations to improve anything, okay, or add information. We don't observe it. So if it's not observable, and we look at all the diversity, how can you objectively not see a creator? Okay, it's weird. I think it's incredible blindness. It's like there must be such a deep fog over your mind that you can't actually see it. I find it interesting. Okay, because because Christians have a different position. They have to try and go, oh, okay, we know there's a God. Maybe you've had spiritual reasons, whatever your reason is, but you know there's a God, and then you go, oh, now we've got to somehow weigh up. Did God do it evolution's way, or did he do it this way? And see, they're trying to look at things far more objectively because they're trying to look at it from both sides. But the evolutionists who have had no spiritual experiences or anything and only believe in a naturalistic thing only look at it from their perspective and can't possibly ever envision it any other way. So, who's closed-minded, who's open-minded? It's obviously the evolutionists who are having real issues. So what did I want to do? I wanted to find out. I go, oh, definitely is a God. I know there's a God because I know there's spiritual things. Okay, so the rational, just naturalistic answers are not enough. They can't solve it. Your science is limited. Okay, so are you right about evolution? So let's look at it. Let's analyze it. Let's objectively study it. I look at it, and I honestly, as objectively as I can, I guess, say you are nuts to believe evolution. You are insane to believe it is even possible. The world's best scientists, you get them all together in a room, the best of the best of the best. You put everyone together and say, I want you to create life in a cell. I want you to create it from just chemicals. Try and work it out where you guys try and make it where it can naturally occur and make a cell. Just make a cell. They all would say it is impossible. We can't do it. We've tried. It's impossible. Now, the best of the best with all the breakthroughs can't do it, but your actual ideology relies on it happening. And your only reason you believe it happened is because of life exists now. So your actual reasoning is, we can't do it, it's impossible, but since there's life, it must have happened. The impossible must have happened somehow. Don't you see the rationale? Your rationale is completely ridiculous. Your position is completely non-scientific. It is only a belief. Your religion is driving you. Your ideology is completely driving you to not look objectively. It utterly astonishes me.